started. So guys, today's agenda would be on APIs, how we'll be interacting with APIs for web scraping. Until so far, we have been discussing related to three major topics. We have first seen basically introduction to e-commerce and e-commerce platform. That was day one. And secondly, we saw introduction to Git and GitHub, basically a source version controlling system, a tool. And then later, we are discussing related to other aspects of web scraping and web crawling, wherein one of the key aspects is getting the data via these APIs. Okay, not always it is mandatory to get the data from the web page or scrape the data from the web page. Sometimes there are, or many times I would say, there are APIs available, and then through those APIs, we basically get the data. Now, most of these applications or e-commerce platforms today have a robust API system present wherein you can uh, send certain kind of request, either get request, post, put, delete. We'll see what are the different types of requests that we can use. But yes, using those requests, you can get the data, or you can basically modify some resource or perform deletion of some kind of data with on that specific web application. So, with that said, we will be covering a little bit of theory, very little bit of theory, and then majorly it will be practical, because how to use API, and there will be like certain examples related to APIs which are closed APIs, or open or APIs that are open. So when I say APIs which are open, it simply means that they are available freely. You don't need an API key or any authentication key to access it. You can access it, you can test your application, you can scrape the data, you can get the data basically, and you can use it directly within your Python script. Uh, the APIs which are closed, it simply means that you need to log in, register with that specific platform, and then use a specific API key uh, inside your Python application, and then it allows you to retrieve the data to that specific API service. So that's the actual difference between closed and open. By closed and open, I actually mean like some APIs which are freely available, which are kind of belonging to that open source category, and some APIs which needs login, registration, and then only you can access it. A few examples of this could be like say um, Twitter API, which wherein you need to have a developer. First of all, you need to have a developer account, and then you can access the Twitter API or any other API related to specific application. Let's say you are working with a Shopify platform. You have built a Shopify e-commerce page, and now you want to integrate it with some another tool. And to integrate it with some another tool, you need an API key, and that is only available when you have a Shopify account. So these are some of the examples of closed APIs. More on this a little later. So when we say API, it simply means, I mean, I'm just now going through the little bit of theory, because these are small concepts that we need to know before we actually jump onto the coding part. So I quickly open Notepad so that I keep a track of what exactly we are discussed. Okay. Open a new Notepad. So my Notepad is visible, right, at your end?
Yeah,
So,
visible.
Yes, yes.
okay, thank you. So API is the first topic that we'll be discussing, or specifically what is API, and what exactly are like different types of API requests. So we'll be talking about HTTP requests over here. And then we'll be specifically talking about the format of data exchange, called as JSON. Then we will be discussing about, of course, we have also spoken about closed and API, which are open, that are open. Okay, 4 points so far that I can think of right now to start ahead with the discussion. So firstly, what is an API? We all know to some extent what API is. Okay, it's a kind of an interface, or you can an intermediate system between your one application, or between your two applications. If I have to explain it to you somewhat in a very layman terms or very graphical way, so it could be just I'll quickly draw two bodies over here. Let's say this is client, this is server, and to and they can interact with each other with the help of a system, an intermediate system called as APIs. Okay, so this API will be acting as an intermediate interface or a contract between the client and server. All right. So when we say that this is an interface or intermediate system, it actually will follow certain kind of protocols, some kind of rules. Okay. So how this communication happen? There would be some requests. So this is our, let's say, client, and this is our server. So basically, then client sends some kind of requests to the server, and then server understands those requests. And if it finds those requests appropriate, then it will reply to those requests. So both of the things are very important. So those requests are meant for the server. If it is correctly meant for the server, then it will respond. And when it will respond, it will reply you with the web page. And hence we see all the web pages. When we go to google.com or any web application, we see all the web pages. So it's a very simple framework. Client sends a request and server sends a response. When the server sends a response, basically the format in which it sends the response and what we see on the web page is on the front end is a web page. So web pages are displayed on using HTML code, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all of the front end languages that you see. Using that, we see the content being displayed on the for the web page. But how about if we but in the world of APIs, okay, so all that I have spoken so far, it is basically was in the perspective of like client sends a request and you see the response, and those responses rendered in the form of web page, and that web page basically is in the form of HTML or any other front-end language. So that is from the perspective of user interface that you see that web page. But then in the world of API, you get the response in the form of JSON. Okay, just give me a minute. I'll create one new instance. Instances. I can basically use the same one. Okay, no problem. So what I'll be doing is, let me write it for you. So this is basically JSON, and JSON is basically a kind of JavaScript object notion, which is a kind of in- it's a basically kind of information that you see getting responded by the website in the form of key value pairs. Okay, so I'm not sure if this is very small for you all, so I'll quickly. Okay, now it should be visible. So what I was trying to say is, JSON is basically a kind of a language, but that language is interpretable, right, by the client side, by the server side, and so in the form of a key value pair. When I say key value pair, simply anything which is written inside flower brackets, that's nothing but JSON file. It's a complete analogy in Python. So JSON basically is nothing but dictionaries in Python. Okay, so if we are saying that we are working with dictionary, uh, indirectly we are actually working with a file and format which is very similar to JSON, wherein you would have a specific key and then you would have a specific value separated by another key and another value. Okay. Now over here, this can grow in complexity as much as it can, wherein you can have one key. Let's say that I'm creating a third key now, key 3, and now the values are a list of values. Let's say value 1, value 2, value 3. Why this JSON file is important for us? The very simple reason is that data that will be returned to us from the server side will be in the form of JSON format. JSON format as in this JavaScript object notation format. And it's based on your JavaScript query language that I think some of you or every one of you might have heard about it or used it at some point in time. Okay, so what I'm trying to specifically highlight over here is the style in which we write JSON. Okay, specifically the dictionary format. And exactly it's the same way how we write dictionary, Python dictionary within the Python programming language. Now, as I said, it can grow in complexity. So one key can have multiple values, or in fact, there can be nested keys also. Like this is a key, and within which there is another file, another dictionary wherein another sub keys are present. So it can grow in complexities, but we need not worry majorly on this part because we have different tools to interpret it. Most of them are third-party, free, open source tools. You can basically copy paste JSON files and then it can prettify it in a better way and allow us to read it in a better manner, right? So I hope some understanding, or in fact, you already might have a good understanding on JSON file. But yes, we will be heavily using these JSON files when we are dealing with APIs and specifically API-based application using Python or in fact any other programming languages. So there are other tools like Postman that we use to create APIs, robust APIs. We use it for testing purpose, or if let's say you have not used tools like Postman or as such any other third-party tools, then still within Python, we would be able to create APIs that would be able to get information, delete information, or basically perform any CRUD operations. Okay, by CRUD operations, I simply mean create, read, update, and delete. We'll see and check more on that when we'll be actually performing some code. So this is about JSON. Um, So if I have to talk about some examples of web-based APIs, then I have already spoken about examples like in real world, every web application, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, any social media platform you talk about, any news application, any, in fact, if you are into stock market, cryptocurrency market, all the web applications have their own APIs to give you some kind of information that you can integrate with your own application, or even if you want to just use it to get the data, and it's available. But the only difference is the closed API versus the open API part. Okay. I hope the closed API and open API concept is clear for you. Now, the next important thing is that if we are trying to use all of these APIs, okay, so we need basically, of course, a coding platform, right? Like Python and all that we would be using. So in Python, we would be specifically using certain libraries. So with the help of these libraries, we would be able to perform or we'd be able to create these APIs. So let me open my editor. Before that, let me go back to the notepad and see if we have covered all of the topics, minor topics, but yes, some information discussion was necessary on these things. So we are good. Okay, so now the next point that I want to cover, of course, the coding part is something which I'll cover a little later, but we were discussing about requests, and in requests specifically I'm talking about HTTP requests. Now, as I said, the communication between client and server will happen with the help of APIs, and these APIs is basically nothing but the request that a client sends to the server. Now these requests are primarily okay, are of four types. These requests are primarily are of four types, so we call it as get, post, put, and delete. Okay, these are the primary four types. There are other types as well, okay, more than this, but we are focusing on these four. Why? Because these are nothing but your actual CRUD operations. When I say CRUD, we are nothing but talking about getting the data. Okay, when I say get, sorry, when I say get a request, we are actually retrieving some information. We are actually retrieving some data. It is equivalent to create in your database language. If you have used SQL or any other relational database, we use a create command, right? That command basically creates a table. So if I say create table, it will create a table in the SQL DB. If I say, let's say, create, update, delete, and read. Okay, so create, you can say get. I'm actually not writing it in the right way. So I'll mention like this so that the similarity is clear. Okay, so if we are trying to get some data, we are basically talking about reading that data. Okay, so here, if we are talking about post, we are actually creating the data. If we are talking about put, we are actually talking about the updation of the data, and then delete is nothing but deletion of the data. So now I hope this analogy or this similarity is clear between the database side of things and your normal web application or API side of things. So in API world or in web applications, we basically use get, post, put, delete. These are the kind of HTTP requests that we send to the server from the client side. And exactly similar way, the if we are performing get operation, we are not doing nothing but we are trying to read some data. If you are doing some post operation, we are trying to basically change the state of a specific resource. Let's say we are trying to enter a web application wherein we are providing the login credentials, the username, the password. Okay, so that's nothing but a post request. Okay, or to give you another example, let's say you are on a web application, Flipkart, Amazon, you are at the shopping cart. Once you are at the shopping page, then you are trying to enter some um,
You are on mute, Ankur.
Mute. Hello. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes. Yeah, now you're audible.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks for confirming. I don't know how I got mute accidentally. Maybe it's some issue with my headphone. Yesterday also I was facing some challenge wherein I got mute accidentally. So until what point you were able to hear? I was discussing about this post operations, and here I was discussing about some examples wherein the shopping cart example that I was discussing.
Yes.
Okay, so no problem. In this shopping cart example, we basically were trying to understand that if we are on a application like Flipkart and Amazon, and then we are at the shopping page, we are adding some items onto our bucket or cart, as we say. That's an example of post request. Why it's a post request? Because we are trying to create some new resource, or we are trying to change the state. Okay, so usually uh, if we need to alter something, if we need to modify something, in that case we use the basically if we need to create something, in that case we'll be using the post request. Get is very simple to understand. Post, I hope we are able to understand now. Put basically will help you to modify or update some kind of resource which is pre-existing, and delete of course for the deletion of that resource. So these are the four prominent requests that we would be using. Now, when we are using these requests, we have to follow some kind of rules. So there is when we are sending this request, there would be a header section, okay, and then there would be the actual body part of it. Now, request headers, or let me write it as request headers. Okay, I hope I am not on mute. Yeah. So request headers, basically, these are it's a piece of information about the request itself, but it will contain some information, like it will have some encoding information, or it basically will specify the language of that expected response. It might also provide the length and the type of data that you have to provide. So all of the information like related to kind of some kind of a metadata would be present inside your header. It would be present inside your header. The body will contain the actual payload. So to give a very specific example, we have not discussed about this, but let me mention it over here. If we have to specify a user agent that we will be using specifically in a web scraping script or web scraping application, then it will be a part of your request headers. Okay. Or if I have to specify some cookies we have been using, like every now and then we basically allow cookies or disallow cookies for a specific website. So they are also a part of a, they are basically part of your request header. All right. So request header basically contains such type of metadata information, and the body will contain the actual body, the payload that you would be either sending in the post request, okay, to the web server. Now, once this HTTP requests are being sent from the server side, there would be some kind of response as well, right? So responses are categorized on the basis of status code, and primarily we have different categories of status code. Like if we talk about 200, which we all know that it's a okay status code, or everything is fine and the request has been succeeded. Okay. Or primarily we might have seen 404 status code, which means resource not found, or server cannot find that requested resource. Okay. Let me write it over here, resource not found. Okay. So this is a type of status code. These status codes are basically used by the web server to let let you know, or let the client know that, okay, whether the request processing was successful then it will display it as 200, or if it was not able to find the resource specific to your request, then it will show you a 404 status code. But primarily they are classified into a 200 series. So I'll write 200 series, then a 300 series, a 400 series, and a 500 series. Okay. So there can be 201, 202, 203, likewise 301, 302, 401, 402, 403, 404, and 500 series, and so on. So primarily, most of the requests that most of the status codes that belong to the 200 series will be a success status codes, but with some kind of in more information related to success. 300 series is mostly related to redirects. 400 series is related to the errors, and that too, it could be client errors, and 500 could be again errors, but they would be server errors. Okay, so these are the common categories of the status codes that we need to know. And if the response that is being provided by the server falls into one of them, let's say it falls in the 400 series, then we are able to identify, let's say 404, that okay, it's some kind of error, and specifically a client side error or a server side error, and so on. So the actual body of response contains these requested information, and it is usually in which format? In the JSON format that we were discussing. Okay, it can be in the form of HTML also, but since we are specifically focusing today on the API side, we are talking about the JSON, and the JSON file will contain this information. All right, I hope we are clear with this point, and I've already shown you the architecture of JSON file. So it's nothing but a dictionary in Python. So we are good with that part as well. All right, so let's move to the coding part then, if the theory is clear. If it's not clear, please let me know. Then we can basically take some more examples. Okay, I see one example, one request in the chat window. So if some examples related to put, let's say for example, you have a certain resource already created. You are creating a web application, or let me give you an example of let's take an example of you are using any social media web application. You have created a what to say, a status over there, or you have created some kind of information, a blog post or whatever it is. Okay, you are trying to modify it, you are trying to update that specific resource. Okay, at that point in time, you would not be authenticating, you would not be creating that resource, but instead you would be modifying it. So whenever you are modifying an existing object, okay, that will be nothing but your put request. That will be nothing but your updation request that you will be sending from the client side to the server side. Now the server will treat it as a put request, but then eventually it will respond to you accordingly based on these four codes that we have just discussed. Either that put request will be successful, or it will be redirected if there is some issue, and if there is some major fatal errors, then it would be either client error or server error. So server will categorize it in the form of responses. But when you are updating an existing object, that will be nothing but a put request or updation request. Okay, so that would be a simple analogy to understand that. I hope that would be clear. Uh, Let me open my VS Code so that I'm able to take a few examples related to All right, here we are. So now let's create a new folder. So I'll go to my documents and I'll create a new folder for today, new directory. Let's call this as API demo 1. Okay, let's say that's the name of my folder. Okay, so the examples that we gonna take for this session basically will be of two categories. The first category is we will be discussing about the APIs that are open, which means we need not have any API key, we need not have any authentication or authorization to access that API and get some information out of it. This scenario number one. Scenario number two is we need to have an account. We need to have an account with specific application, and then only we are able to access their API keys. All right. So in scenario number one, I'll create a subfolder over here and I'll name it as APIs which are open so that it's easier for you to understand like what code we have written for what scenario. Inside that, I'll create a new file, which is, let's call it as your main.py. All right. Inside this main.py file, now firstly, we have to understand which web application we are trying to access. So if I go to my Edge browser, and here it's an basically the web application that we are trying to use over here is basically called as rickandmortyapi.com. It's a specific website that we normally use for API scraping or basically getting the data through API. And it's open API. You don't have any restrictions, meant for scraping the data. And it's a very good use case application if you have to test your specific APIs. Now you see over here at the top side, you have docs. Inside the docs, now this is basically a simple, a web application over here. If you click on the docs, this is the documentation of the API. Now, a very generic rule of thumb is that if you are trying to access API of any application, really doesn't matter. You have to be very well versed and you have to read thoroughly your API documentation, because over there would be ways, techniques of how to deal with that specific API, how to create the requests for that API. Anyways, you would be creating read, update, delete, all of these CRUD requests, but the way you would be creating your HTTP requests, what should go inside the header, what should go inside the body, that kind of information you would get through the documentation of your API. So you need to see the API. If you are dealing with Twitter API, go through that Twitter API. If you are dealing with API of any other platform, then you have to go through the respective documentation. Now over here in the documentation part, you can see that okay, if you are working with GraphQL, what exactly would be the syntax? If you are working with the REST format, what would be the syntax, and so on. Okay, as I scroll below, you can see the documentation is extensive and you can see all of this information. Okay, so I'll not go through each and everything of this documentation so far because it's just a test application for us and we'll be writing code in Python. So what we'll be doing is we'll go back. All I need is this URL, and specifically I'll open one more page /API Okay, now you can see that this is the response it is providing me. So I am specifically hitting this endpoint slash API. Okay, here you can see that there is a JSON response when there is characters, and then this is the URL. It's a key, and these are the values. Location is a key, and this is the value. And episodes is the key. These are the values. It's a kind of some kind of you can say a serial wherein there is characters, there are locations in that those characters, and then those are the episodes for that specific serial. So this entire application is built on this specific theme. Now if you hit this specific endpoint, I'll copy this and open it on a new page over here. You would be able to see I'm trying to access the character endpoint. Okay, so earlier I accessed the API endpoint, now I'm accessing the character endpoint over here. So if I access the character endpoint over here, you can see another type of JSON response that I'm getting, wherein there is an info key and this is the value, okay, within the dictionary. So there is an information key and these are the values like, okay, what is the count? So the count of results is 826. How many pages are present? 42 pages are present. Okay, I think we are at the first page right now, but then there would be 42 pages after this. See over here, they have also mentioned what would be the next page. So if this is the starting page, then the next page is, this is the link of the next page. You can clearly see that page equals to 2. If I copy this, open in a uh, new tab, you can see this is the second page, and then this is the third page, and the previous page was page 1. Okay, so this is the information. And what are the results? These are the results. So you have a results key, and then it's a list of values. So there's an ID, there's a name of that person, the status, and other information that they have mentioned. Okay, anyways, we are mostly concerned about the information this API endpoint is returning, because through this we will be doing some kind of data manipulation or data transformation. Okay, so see, eventually our aim always in web scraping, either through API or through traditional web scraping method, is to get the data and perform certain data transformation or data manipulation on it to convert that data into structure format so that we can use it later or we can get some valuable insights from it. That is the eventual aim of web scraping. Okay, the aim of automation is to orchestrate some kind of a workflow. Correct. So now with respect to this final objectives, if I go back to my VS Code, and over here, the first thing that I would be doing is I would like to make some kind of imports over here. These imports are nothing but related to the libraries that I would need to send a request to this specific API endpoints, to this web URLs that we just saw. So we need a request library. So I'll say import requests. So request library is basically used for us to send requests, the request that we just spoke about a few moments back, right? We'll be sending some HTTP requests, right? So we need this request library, and we also need, let's say, a JSON library. I mean, not soon, but then at some point in time, we would also need this JSON library. And it's very useful library for JSON manipulation, and it will help you to visualize your JSON formatted data in a very pretty way. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, sometimes it's the JSON files are not readable enough, and you cannot understand or you cannot grasp like, okay, what exactly this JSON file is having, the content it's having. So we would use this JSON, and basically JSON, and basically this JSON library will have two methods, the load method and the dump method. We'll discuss about more on that when it comes. Just give me a moment, guys. All right. I'm back. So we were discussing about the JSON library and we're discussing about the requests library that we need to import. Mostly requests will be using in almost in every occasion, and so is JSON library. Now, the URL that we were trying to access was until this point, I think API. So I'll try to create a variable for this and we'll call this as space URL. Okay, this is a variable for that I've created, and I'll be trying to access this endpoint. I mean, specifically, I would be trying to access this endpoint first, which is character over here. So if you remember, this was the original API endpoint. Inside this, I got this response, characters, locations, and episodes. Character key has this value, and you can see there is a character endpoint over here. So this is the value that I would use, and this can keep on changing. Now instead of character, I can access location or episode, vice versa. So let me create a variable specifically for this as endpoint is equals to character. All right. Now, what's my aim? My aim is to send a request and get some response out of this specific URL. There is an extra quote over here. I'll remove this. For this, we would we can write this commands pretty straightforward way. Let's say using the requests library, I can use the get method, and inside the get method, I can provide my base URL, okay, which is nothing but until API. Plus, I can also have the endpoint as well. So endpoint, all right. So this should be sufficient enough and I can get a response out of this. Okay, this can be one way of doing this. So I'm sending a request to this specific API endpoint, which is nothing but this URL and concatenated with this endpoint. Since these are strings, you can concatenate them using the plus operator. Cool. But another way of doing this could be a more robust way, since we are developing some application, try to understand that if we are developing some API application, then it would be to modularize it with the help of some function. So you can create a function called as, let's say, main request. Okay, time being, I'm just keeping it inside this function, and inside this main request function, let me have uh, two parameters passed inside the function. One is your base URL. Another one will be your endpoint, which can vary according to your requirement. And one more variable or argument that you can have inside the function is based on the page that you're trying to access. You can see over here. So if you are at the character endpoint, inside character endpoint, you are at page 2. Let's say tomorrow you are trying to read page 3, or after that, after some point in time, I just copy this and say page 20 instead of, so you can see, you can access multiple pages. How many pages are there? 42 pages are there in total. I am accessing the 20th page. 21 is the last page. You can also access 42. So you can have one more variable with this page over here. So I can say this variable as X. Okay, I can say this variable as X. And then I can basically add this over here. So I am basically trying to add this over here with this. And this 42 is nothing, instead of 42, I'll mention this as X. I'm just doing string formatting, guys. Nothing new. It's a very normal thing in Python. Okay, so what we have done is I have created an argument called as X, and X is nothing but the page number over here. So this thing over here is nothing but we would be using a slash over here, because after character it would be slash and then this specific endpoint. Whatever the page number it is, 1, 2, 3 until page 42. Cool. So this is one thing, and then we would return this response. We basically return that response. So this is our main function that we have created. Okay, and if we run this main function, then we should be getting some kind of response. And over here, let's try to run this. Let's say I say main request. Herein, I provide the same thing, base URL, comma, endpoint, which is character, comma, and let's say I'm accessing page 3. Okay. Now, the first thing you need to see what is your you can say interpreter that you are using in VS Code. Currently, it seems like I'm using a Conda environment, which I don't know why it has automatically selected. I have not specifically selected it over here. By default, it's using the mini Conda environment over here. So the first thing that I should be doing is changing this. One way of this is you can create your own virtual environments and then start working on any specific projects. So you can do that as well. So guys, are you aware of virtual environments? How exactly it is created? Any?
Yes, yes, sir.
Perfect. Okay. So if you are aware of virtual environments, then I would basically just create one quickly, and then we can, because I'll not go into the theory part of that. I assume that you all are aware of that specific thing. So we are,
Actually, yeah, Ankur, I'm not aware about how to create a VM, so please.
okay, sure, no problem. I'll update you on that. So see, you're not aware of how to create it, or you're not aware of the concept of it.
How to create it, yeah.
How to create conceptually, you're aware, right? What are virtual environments?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So to create a virtual environment, the command is very simple in Python. So what we do is we are currently inside this API underscore open folder. Assume that this is my project folder, and we are at the root of it. So the ideal practice or the good practice is that you create a virtual environment within that project itself, so that when you export it to the next stage, let's say you are a developer, you are sending it to a QA stage, you can just you can have that virtual environment and then export all of that information into the requirements.txt file, which will have all the libraries and its associated versions. And then you can provide the requirements.txt file to that next person in the next stage instead of sending the virtual environment. So you can use the git ignore command to exclude that virtual environment, so that the virtual environment doesn't get transferred to your main branch. Okay, that's something that we have seen when we discussed about the Git and GitHub, how to use a git ignore file and then how to ignore certain extensions or folders. So we can basically ignore the virtual environment folder that would be that would get created at the root of your project. Having said that, the command to create the virtual environment is very straightforward. You basically use Python hyphen -m venv. Now there are two ways. Okay, venv is a native way of creating a virtual environment, but there is another module called as virtual env that you can download and install from pypy.org. Okay, I'll discuss about that in a later part. But right now, assume that you are using this venv command to create your virtual environment, and it's a native way, the basic way of to create a virtual environment in Python. So Python -m venv, and then here you can provide the name and path of your virtual environment. Let's say you don't want to create virtual environment here. You want to create it at your D drive somewhere. Let's say D. So D/ABC folder, and then that would be your name of the virtual environment. You can create it this way, or you just provide the name of the file over here. You just say that, okay, at this specific location, inside the API demo 1 folder, I want to create a virtual environment, and the name of the folder itself would be venv. Okay, so are you getting this? So when I say Python -m venv, it simply means it should create a virtual environment over here itself. Okay, so let it run a moment. You see, a folder is getting has been created. We'll wait for it to finish, and it's done. Okay. Now inside this, if we have to activate this virtual environment, all that we need to do is we need to navigate into the scripts folder, and you see the activate file over here. So all that I would do is change directory. I'll go inside the venv folder. Inside the scripts folder, here there is an activate file. I'll activate it, and now we are inside venv. But the point here is just a second. I did not wanted this what you say base environment to be present. Okay, let me do one thing. I'm deactivating the base, or maybe I've used the Conda Conda library over here, and that's the reason it's showing you. You can see over here C program data mini Conda. Okay, no problem. What I would be doing is, let me redo this one more time. Okay, I'll go back to the root folder, which is inside the documents API demo 1, and I'll delete this. Okay, I'll just delete and I'll redo this. But this time there would be a slight change over here. Okay, so now it's deleted. So the change over here is, right now the interpreter which is selected over here is from the Miniconda. Okay, Miniconda is similar to Anaconda distribution, which is a smaller version of Anaconda, which has less packages than Anaconda. Okay, so I don't want the virtual environment to be created from Miniconda. So instead of that, I would use my base Python installation, the Python installation that I installed on the machine. Okay, in C program files or C Python 3.11, you can see this one. This is my global installation. So I'll select this one over here. You see the interpreter gets changed. Once the interpreter gets changed, let me close this terminal and open the terminal, or delete this one. And now I am into a new terminal. Now this is my base Python installation, and here I will create my new virtual environment inside API demo 1. Same command, Python -m venv. So I'll just write it. And now it should create a virtual environment over here inside the project folder. The difference over here is this virtual environment uses the Python exe from the Python installation and not from the Miniconda that we were using earlier. Okay. Since we were using Miniconda, it was showing the base environment pre-activated over there, and I did not wanted that base environment because it has Python data science related packages, which I don't need over here at this point. I need my new virtual environment, and hence I have redone this specific step. Now your virtual environment is created. All that you have to do is you have to activate it. So go to the VNV folder, go to the scripts folder, and then activate it like this. So your virtual environment is created. If you see what are the packages inside this, so it only has two components, the pip and setup tools, because it's a new virtual environment and you have not installed any new package over here. One more thing you have to do explicitly is now your Python interpreter is pointing to your global installation. But now since you have created a virtual environment, change this Python interpreter to the new virtual environment path. So over here inside API demo 1, you have this virtual environment created. Inside the scripts folder, you have a Python exe. Select this exe because this exe is your virtual environment Python exe. And now from now onwards, since you will be installing packages, you'll be writing all of the code, it should refer to the Python exe of your virtual environment and not the global Python installation. Okay, so I'll select the interpreter over here, and you can see the interpreter gets changed and also your virtual environment is activated. One more thing you need to do is you need to come out of this specific path and point, and the terminal should be pointing to the root of your project. Okay, until this point, everyone is with me. Any questions on this? Can you give me an example? Okay, that was a previous one. No, I means everything is okay. All right. So now next point over here is we basically, now as you can see, requests is showing error over here. The next thing is we can do pip install requests, and over here requests you can refer, it's present inside pip install requests. I'm just mentioning it in Google. If you directly go to the requests.py.org, and here from here we are using this command, okay, and it will download request version 2.31.0. Okay, this is your py.org. It's a repository in Python wherein all the packages are present, and from here it will install and download, install, and manage through pip. So for now we just need request. Tomorrow we'll need beautiful soup as well, so we'll install it at that point in time. So it's collecting, it's installing, and then in just a moment it should be done. Once it's completed, you can verify it using pip list or pip freeze, whatever is fine. You should be able to see the request's latest version. If you want a specific version, you can do that as well. But that point you should have said that, okay, you want request is equals to, let's say, version 1.2.1. So it would have installed 1.2.1 version of request. Anyways, so now we have requests installed, and you can see the error over here is gone. I mean, it's not able to, it's able to identify the request library successfully. Now over here, just clear the screen. Just mention Python and your main.py. So inside API demo 1, we are inside the API folder, right? API underscore open. Okay. So I'll say API underscore open. And now Python main.py. Okay, small mistake. I think I have forgot to put colon at the end. So I'm getting a response of 200. Now, what is this response all about? We'll just talk in just a moment. I just remove some clutter from my screen. Okay, now we are able to successfully send the request, and the response that we are getting is 200, which means that okay, that server was able to cater to our request and giving us a successful response code of 200. And we have discussed about the significance of response code 200, right? Now, if I have to print this response, okay, so let's say, or let me write it in a different way. Instead of this, let me say response is equals to this function, which is main request. And here I'll mention base URL, endpoint, and X, which means your page number. Okay, this. And let's say we want to print this response. I'll run it. Again, I mean, we are getting that response is 200. Now, we actually are interested in seeing the content that it is being, that we are getting it from the server side within this response object. So what you can do is you can basically write response.content, or you can write response.json. Response.json would be a better way because you'll be able to see the JSON format of that specific response. So I'll just mention to get the JSON response. All that you need to do is print response.json. Okay. So response.json, the moment you run this, I'll explain it to you. You can see it's a dictionary. It's a Python dictionary, and it's having the entire content from that page. You might have recalled that there was an info key, and then there was a results key as well. And within the info key, there was this information, and then results key is present. And then inside the result key, there was this information. Correct? If you go back to the web page, you'll get the same thing. Now, over here, this is a dictionary, guys. Response.json is a dictionary, and you can validate all of this. I mean, I'm not saying it from my side. You can validate it by using the type function. You should get it's of the dictionary data type. Anyways, so since it's a dictionary data type, you can access these keys, and you can access from those keys, you can access those values, and then you can perform some kind of data pre-processing operation. Okay, but that is something we will see sometime later. Before that, this dictionary, if you want to convert, okay, this dictionary to a string format, JSON format string, then you would use something called as JSON library over here. Okay, try to understand. This is a dictionary data type. Let me run this one more time. Okay, you can see the class of dictionary. So it's a Python dictionary object, but I want to convert this into a JSON format string. To convert this into a JSON format string, I need the JSON library. And within the JSON library, I need a method called as dumps. So why do we need all of that? We'll come to know in just a moment. But try to understand this. Convert Python dictionary to JSON format string object using JSON.dumps. So we have already imported JSON library, which was inbuilt Python library. So JSON.dumps. Here, first argument, it expects an object. What's the object? Is response.json. It's a Python dictionary. And second object, there are multiple things, but I want this format to be looking a little better. So I'll use the indent argument, and I'll provide a specific indentation of, let's say, 4 over here. And then I'll try to print this thing up. Okay, so right now, guys, what we are doing is we got the data by accessing an API endpoint. Once we have received the data, we are trying to perform some kind of data transformation in it, and we are seeing different methods to do it. Okay, timing, I'll comment the above 17th and 18th line, and only it should execute the 22nd one. And now you can see the format is little better as compared to what we got earlier. Plus, this is a string, not a dictionary object. So you have to understand that this is now a string. If you check the type of this object, you would get a string. On contrary to this dictionary that we got earlier from response.json. Now, if you, this was just as in a side note, we might use it, we might not use it. That's a different use case altogether. Okay, but right now, since we have our response.json, which was present over here at line number 18, which was a dictionary, which was a dictionary, sorry, at line number 17, what we can do is we can access its respective keys. Let's say to get keys, all we need is, then I want to enumerate all the keys. So guys, inside a dictionary, if I have to enumerate all the keys, what is the way we do that specific operation? I want to list all the keys in the Python dictionary. Any suggestions?
We can do dictionary.keys.
Dictionary.keys, perfect. And for values, we can do dictionary.values, perfect. If you want to enumerate both keys and values,
dictionary.items.
items, perfect. Okay, so let's try to implement all of that. So we will have response. You can variabilize all of this. Like instead of me writing every time response.json, you can create a variable, let's say call as data, and then do data.keys, sorry, data keys or data values or data items on top of it. I am writing explicitly over here so that you understand that, okay, this is an object that we got after hitting that endpoint, which is in the dictionary format. On top of it, I am accessing, sorry, on top of it, I am accessing the keys method. And once you run this, the expectation is that it should give you the keys for that specific dictionary. So here we are getting the info results. These are the keys. All right. If I have to access a specific key over here, let's say info again, which is again, I'm trying to parse that dictionary. So access specific key. All that you need to do is copy this, paste it over here, and here instead of keys, you would be accessing the key name. Sorry, it would be info. So whatever is present as in the value for this info key, it should be displayed. Okay, good until this point. Now we are doing all the basic steps over here. Let's say we move ahead with one new scenario. I want to find the number of pages over here. I want to find the number of pages which was present in the response, correct? If you check the response, which is over here, so we are at page 42. Let's assume, or let's remove this page 42. Let's go to the page 1 itself. So we are at page 1. On page 1, you see over here, this was the number of pages. And why we need this number of pages, guys? Because we will be doing pagination on top of this. By the term pagination, I simply mean that I want to parse each and every page with respect to a specific key name and a value. Let's say from each and every page, I need to know what the name, what's the status, what's the gender, and let's say what's the episode that person was present. Like this person was present in these many episodes. So I want to collect that kind of data, and then let's say my use case is to create a tabular structure, maybe in pandas data frame, and then export it in a CSV format. Let's say that's our eventual aim of doing this API web scraping activity. To do that, I need to know how many pages are present at the first instance. So sometimes the API will give you this information over here itself. Sometimes it won't be there present like over here as in a key value pair. But then you have to see until what point you are able to parse. And in doing that, when you will be creating that logic, that time you have to perform some kind of an iteration. You have to run some kind of loops. Okay, so over here, we need this information like my loop will run 42 times and it will keep on changing this page number from 1 to 42. And when it passes each page or when it visits each endpoint, it will get these informations from there. I hope all of this is making sense and what we are trying to accomplish in this specific activity. Okay, via API. We are not scraping any web page over here through the normal web scraping techniques, but through API, whatever information is being returned, we are trying to get. We are trying to perform some operation on that information. Now, for that, I need to know how many pages. So the process is very simple. The way you have accessed info, you have to access the pages. But why not do it in a better way? Because since we'll be creating an application out of this, so let's create a function. Get pages, and over here, let's call this as, I mean, I am not writing the code over here, but instead over here, I would be supplying. So I'm getting, I will be running this specific function, which is main request, and it will give a response at the output. Okay, so I'll copy this response from here. And then response.json, and this will be a dictionary. On top of this dictionary, I'm accessing what? I'm accessing info key. So I'll write it over here. Once the info key is accessed, I'm accessing the pages key. So I'll write it over here this way. And then I'll variabilize this as pages, and it should return pages. So, okay. And to just validate if it is giving us the right output, I'll run this function. Here I'll just mention response. Okay, I mentioned response. It's expecting me to provide me that argument, which is nothing but the response that we will get after running the above function, which is our main request function. If we run this, we are getting 42, which is the page count. And we will need this information, guys, later when we'll be doing pagination operation. Good until this point. Now, I'll park that pagination concept. I'll just mention it over here so that we don't forget. I will park that pagination concept to be completed over here. So pagination is one aspect, but once you create a script that will crawl through individual 42 pages, you need to get some information, right? It's not just crawling, it's scraping also. I mean, you need to get the data. Which data? So here we would be getting, let's say, name, episodes, and some another information over here. So when it goes through each page, it will get us this data. So let's write those functions, or what you say, that logic to get this specific information. So again, I'll mention, let's say if I want to get name. So the code is very simple. You would just use, in fact, I'll do a copy paste over here. So over here, so name is present inside where name is present inside results. Okay. So instead of info, you will make it as results, and here you will make it as name. And then you will variabilize this as name, and then you will print that name. I'm just checking if this works fine or not, then I'll modularize it into a Python function. And why not, let's do episodes as well at one go. So I'll copy paste this over here. Instead of name, I'll mention episodes. This should be same. This should be episodes. If my syntax, okay, it's episode. And then I print name episodes. Okay. So let's run this and see if we are able to get the name and episodes. So episodes is like list. Okay. All right. So we are expecting a list. Instead of writing episodes, let's get the length of episodes. Let's run this. What happened? Response.json results name. Line 45 is some issue. So this is a dictionary. I am trying to access results and then trying to access the name. Looks correct to me. Okay. Inside, I think results. Okay, you cannot access the name here directly.
I think
because
the
it's
result is list of dictionaries.
Yes, exactly. I was just arriving on that point. Thanks for that. This is name. So what you need to do, this is 0th index position. This is first index position. So you need, so sorry, this is 0th position. Okay. So you need to access results square bracket 0 name. Okay. And likewise square bracket 0. So guys, as I mean, you rightly mentioned that this results is a key, but then the value is a list of dictionaries. If you are accessing a list, you have to see what is the first element in the list. This is the first element in the list at index position 0. Hence, I am accessing index position 0 where within this index position 0, I am accessing a dictionary, and this index position 0 is nothing but a dictionary. So I'm accessing the key of the dictionary by this convention. Okay. And likewise, I'm accessing the episode. Episode should also be here somewhere. Here it is. All right, let's run this. So we are getting this value over here. Which page are we accessing? By the way, this is not the first page. I think we are accessing some different page over here. Oh, we are accessing the second page. Hence, it's not giving the. So over here, this was the person on the first page. I just change it to 1 to verify. So it should be Rick Sanchez with 51 episodes. Okay, we are getting the right response. Good. Until this point, now let's create a function. And in this function, you can scale it as per your requirement. Now, today you need name and episode, but tomorrow you need more information. You can scale it accordingly, modify this function. But this function would be used once your pagination will be active, and when your script will navigate through each and every page, it will basically scrap this specific information. Okay, until this point, I hope we are good. So let's create all of this as a function. Yeah, thanks for confirming that. So pages, pagination to be completed. So over here, I'll mention let's say number of episodes. I'm just mentioning this because I'll be uploading this file into the GitHub, so you'll be able to refer it, and it should make sense to you, like what we did in which step. So it should not get confusing at any point in time. Let's create a function over here. Let's call this as parse page. And over here, I'm expecting again a response from above. Here I put so once I get a response, I would basically run a loop. So from item in that dictionary, which is response dot JSON, inside that I'm accessing the results key, I guess. Yes, results key, and then I would basically copy paste this part. Sorry. Oops. It's the same thing that that we have written earlier, but I have copy pasted away. So for each item that we will get from that response object, so response.json is nothing but the entire dictionary of that page. I mean, right, and entire content of that page. From that content, we are accessing the results key. Okay, so that would nothing be your item, and instead of response.json, I'll just mention this and this. So what we're doing is we are trying to access that name key and the episode key. We'll get the name and episodes, and then we'll print the name and length of episodes. And what we can do is we can run this function to see if this works. And if there is anything above, I'll just so our expectation is we should get the name and then the value. So we got Rick Shenses 51, and then we got all the other people as well. Oh yeah, right? Because on this page, there are multiple people with multiple different episodes. If you see onto this page, this is one person and the information related to that person. If I scroll below, second ID, second person, and information related to second person, so on and so forth. So now this parse page function basically gets us all the information. Is this logic clear, or should I explain it one more time, guys? Is this clear how it's able to get or pass the information?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, perfect. Now over here, if you see, now basically we have passed this specific page, and now you can implement the pagination over here, which we have discussed earlier. So now let's do one thing. This is the response that we are getting. So over here, we can write the function or we can write the logic to create that pagination. Until this point, I hope everyone is clear. All that remains at this step is where have I written pagination to be completed? Yeah. So all that remains over this step is to create a for loop. Okay, I'm giving you an idea or giving you a concept over here before writing the code. Okay, I would expect you to let me know what exactly would be the next step to implement a logic that would iterate over all the pages and run this function, simply run this parse page function. So what is your thought process, how we can proceed ahead? Are you guys able to get the question? So firstly, what we did is we basically hit the endpoint. We have a main request. Main request basically gives us the response.json, which is a dictionary. Using that response, we basically try to get pages, like how many pages are present, like over here 42 pages are present or 52 pages, whatever the number of pages present. Why we need this information, I told you earlier. Then we created a specific function which basically extracts data with respect to the name, with respect to episodes, and then we get the name and episodes of that specific page. But now the next objective is to execute the parse page function for all 42 pages that we have. Now, what should be the next logic? What do you think could be the next step? Okay, I'll write a pseudocode. Yeah, please tell me. Yeah.
What we can do here, we already have a pages number, pages count, right? So we can apply for loop here. We can make use of the URL and append this pages number.
Perfect. Okay. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be basically running a iterator, which is a for loop on an range. Let's say range is 42. So from 1 until 42, that loop will run. Every time the loop will run, it will basically call this function over here. Which one? Main request function. Let's say first time the loop is running, what will be the value of x? 1. Second time loop is running, 2, 3, 4 until 42. Cool. And once you get the response, let's say first time when the loop is running, the page number is set to 1, then you will get the response. Then you will call this get pages function. So not this one, sorry, my bad. We'll call this parse pages function. You will get that information. You would like to store it in some, let's say, list. Then the next loop runs, second page. Again, you will run the parse page function, and then you'll get the data and append it to that list, and so on and so forth. Are you able to understand?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. What I'll do is, this is a very interesting thing, and I would really want you all also to participate in this. As always, I always try to give as much exercise for you all. So I'll write a pseudocode over here, not the actual code, but I would want you to complete this and give me as in kind of just to see, and different people will execute it in different way, I guess, because one way is doing through for loop. We all know that, but there are other ways of running an iterator. Try with some different approach using maybe enumerate function. Think about it. Is it possible? Can you do it? Or use any, is filter map reduce also applicable over here? If you have understood about like how filter map reduce works in Python, or the map reduce function works in Python, just think about that as well. But anyways, I am I'm more interested to see how many ways are there to implement this, but a very generic way would be for loop. Okay, so I'll write a pseudocode over here and I'll leave this for you to complete, and I'll complete it as well once I see some of the responses from your side. So for I in range, what we discussed right now is range 42, but I'll not hard code this. Instead of this, I'll say get pages response. This will give me the page count, isn't it? So I'll mention it over here, but I will start from 0, isn't it? So I should say 1 comma this, because there's no page called 0 as far as I remember. Or is it? There should not be any page 0. Let me see. Character /1. Okay, this is the first page. Character /1. Okay, sorry, not this one. We are at the API, right? So we hit this specific page over here. Correct. Now, if I copy this as it is over here, but instead of page 2, I mention page 0. Okay. Is there anything over here? Okay, it is giving me the same page, which is page 2. If I write page 1 over here, of course, it will go to the first page. Right, which is the same page. And then page 2. So we are at the second page, third page, and so on. So anyways, even if accidentally you would have written 0 over here, that would have not caused any issue for this application. But for any other application where page 0 doesn't exist, or it will redirect you, it would have given you resource not found, this would have been an issue. So no problem. But anyways, I'll keep best practice as a standard. I'll start with page 1. And until 42, this will return me 42, but I think this will be a string value, isn't it? Because, yeah, it should be a string. So we have to convert this into integer. We have to typecast this as integer. And if we say 1 to 42, it will go until 41. So I'll mention it +1 over here. Now, within this, we have to call which function? Main request function. Just give me a moment, guys. Just give me a moment. Sorry, I'm back. So what I was trying to do is, just a second. Okay, guys, I'm back. So try and range this. Okay, so we have to call this main request function. I'll copy it as it is. Instead of 1, I will mention I. Correct, right? We'll get Let's get a response. And then once you have that response, you can supply it to the next state. Next step is as in the parse page function. So here you will have, sorry, habit of PowerShell. So yeah, you will write the function for parse page. Okay. So what I'm expecting guys over here is it's a very small piece of work which is pending. All that you have to do is you have to mention the parse page function and then you have to run this for loop. Eventually, what I need is it will give you all the data, but where would you store all the data? I'm expecting a list over here. Let's call this as main list is equals to this. Whatever data that you would get at the end, okay, from here, you would append it to that main list. Okay, so it would be main list dot something like append and whatever data that you would get over here. You're getting my point. So eventually, finally, you would be getting that main list. I'm writing a pseudocode over here because this is something which I'm expecting for you to complete. If any challenge, let me know. We'll figure it out. Once this main list is completed, you guys work with pandas or any other library like PySpark or something? Are you familiar with that? Because there can be an improvement on this. We can have one more stage over here. Guys?
Yes, we know pandas.
No pandas, perfect. So now what we do is we just go import pandas and then the expectation is pd dot create data frame. Data frame. I'm giving just idea over here. This main list should be your data. Okay. If you want, you can specify some columns also. Eventually, what you will get is your data frame. If you run it, it should be a tabular format data frame. The next improvement can be you can export this to CSV file as well. And let's say that is results.csv, something like that. See, all of this is more related to data preprocessing, but our focus is related to API, working with API and its data. So and related to data preprocessing and all, I'm leaving it to yours end. So for you to complete. As I said, please let me know if you face any challenge. I will mention all of this as comment over here because this is a pseudocode. This is not an actual code. In fact, this as well for you to complete. Is the requirement clear, guys? Any question for this specific requirement? No questions? Okay, thanks for confirming. Now, since this was related to handling an API request, we basically accessed the get method over here. Okay, what we did is we basically got some information over. But what about sending some information, creating a new request, updating something, or deleting something? Okay, for that, we need some application to log in into. Let's say, for example, if you are using Twitter, so we have a Twitter API wherein you can create a feed, Twitter feed, modify that Twitter feed, or delete that Twitter feed, isn't it? So that is the next use case that we would be looking on. I mean, we would not be using the Twitter account because see, Twitter has certain very strict guidelines also these days. Because I did some scraping activity and all, so the developer account gets revoked very quickly. So we cannot do extensive API or data scraping on such applications. So my ex-developer account recently got revoked. But for this use case, I have one more web application, and it's a public API which is present. Let me whether API, if I remember correctly. Mm, see, I should find it over here. Okay, here it is. I think we could use weather API, this one, or this one, anyone would do. These are public API, guys, and you can use it. Let's try this one. Okay, I'm already logged in because it looks like I have an account integrated with this specific API. Maybe I might have used it earlier. So here it is. Okay. So you can see this is what we are trying to do is we are trying to access weather related information. Again, this one is specifically related to the GET request. You can use this interface over here to test the endpoint. Okay. I'll just zoom out a bit because I know it's very small for you guys, but you can open this endpoint. I'll copy paste in the chat window first. Where is the chat window? Yeah, here. And you can access this API. And I have just scrolled out because it's very, I mean, the elements are very, it's a little difficult to work over here with this specific web page. Anyways, I'll go to the Python part of it, Python and requests. Okay. And this is the entire code which is present. Okay, anyways, what we will do is we'll look at this code a little later. I'll go back to my VS Code, create a new directory. So this was my API open. Create a new folder called as API closed because this one would require some API key. I'm expecting this to require some API key, and then I'll create a new file inside this called main.py. Within main.py, we would basically write all our code. So important libraries to mention over here is requests, JSON, primary libraries. Since we are doing data scraping with API, we are not using any other library like Beautiful Soup or requests. We are not using that. Okay. Now, next thing is we need that base URL or URL that we were discussing earlier. So if you see this site here, they have this icon over here. Here you can basically see the URL over here. Okay, we'll copy this URL, which is HTTPS. It's very small. Let me zoom in a bit so that it's easier. Copy this and then paste it over there. Okay, this would be a base URL. Now, the next thing is this would require some authentication and API key, right? So we need to provide the header part. And guys, if you remember earlier, in the start of the session, as I said, when you are submitting some request to the server from the client side, you need to specify a header and you might need to specify some parameters, correct? So in the earlier request, in our earlier use case, we were not doing this because it was taking the default header configuration, or it was not requiring any specific information within the header. Like API key, it was not expecting. Hence, it was okay to just send a request directly and get a response code of 200. But here inside header, we need to supply some API key, right? Why I'm saying this? Because here itself, if you see, they have provided you the way of submitting the headers. Okay, they have given you the format. So I'll copy paste this and mention it over here. So this is our headers. So this is the key, this is the value, this is the host, and this is the domain that we are trying to access for that specific API URL. This key, I'm not sure. Is this the same key that I have in my account? Let me check. And guys, for you, if you are testing it, you would use your own API keys. My API keys would be deleted very soon. So let me see, where is my key? You would find it possibly under user settings. On my APIs, I have it over here, I think. Saved APIs, okay. I am expecting it should be here or somewhere. This is just some statistical information. Add new app, add authorization, details. No, it's not here. Well, there should be some way to generate APIs and new API keys. So just let me know if you are able to find out, or if I have accidentally missed looking at that specific API key. Just let me know. Nope. Are you guys able to access that link, and are you able to have that API key? Did anyone try it at the site? My apps default application edit, and this is my application configuration. If I go over here, settings, here is the weather API name. If I click on this, it should give me the key, hopefully. Okay, it's redirecting me to the same thing. Anyways, what I'll do is I'll use the key, whatever they have provided, assuming that it's the API key for me, and I will use the same key. Okay, and we'll run the code, and eventually we'll get to know whether that key is working or that key is not working. Anyways, okay, so I'll assume that this is the API key that is provided to me because I'm not able to find it in their interface. Now that's done. Once you have the header created, you would send. Now guys, sometimes API keys are also sent as a part of parameters. Okay, so that's a different thing. If you run requests library dot get, same way, then you specify the URL, and then inside the headers, you specify the headers dictionary that has the API key. And does it need parameters? We can also check over here inside this. So this is Node.js. I'll just quickly change it to Python. So it would need, yes, parameters it needs. So it needs a query string, and this query string is provided over here. This is nothing but, I guess, if I remember correctly, is the latitude, longitude information of that location for which you want to get weather data. Okay, so it's some latitude or longitude. If you change this value, the location gets changed. So you can pass this as a parameter. Parameter is equals to query string, like this. Eventually, the URL that you would see, it would have a parameter with this latitude, longitude information. Based on that, the weather data would be populated. This would be your response. This would be your response, and now I would print that response there to see if this is working fine. Let's run this. Okay, we're getting the response of 200, which looks okay. So I should have mentioned JSON over here. So, okay, we are getting information. So assumption was correct. This is the actual key, which is linked to my account. And then guys, I mean, in a real-time scenario, these keys, you can set it as an environment variable and all. There is a .env module as well. You can install and use .env. So basically you have a separate file over here. Let's say it's called secrets.py. Within that file, you basically have this key. And then over here, you basically load it as an environment variable using the .env module. More on that, I mean, you can check at your end, and that is one of the ideal way of importing the secrets or API keys. So we have a JSON file. The next thing is we can. So this JSON file is what? A dictionary. Okay, but if we need to, now let's see, response dot content. So guys, what's the difference between response.json object and response.content? Was my next question to you. If I run response.content, I'm expecting same dictionary or something like that. But what do you think is the difference? Response.json, we know it's a dictionary. It's a Python dictionary. We saw in the earlier use case. Response.content would be a byte string. You can see over here. If you check the type of this would be class bytes. Okay. If you have to convert it into string format, what is the technique? Remember, if you have to convert it into string, JSON string format, what is the technique? If you remember, we loaded a file called a library called as JSON. So JSON,
JSON.dumps.
yeah, JSON.dumps will, what it will do, it will convert dictionary to JSON format string. So we have a dictionary, right? So JSON.dumps, we have a dictionary with the name JSON.dumps. not JSON, sorry, response.json. That was our dictionary. And we just want to check the type of it because we know that it will give us the same output, but what we need to know is just the type of it. If I run this, okay, I think okay, I made a mistake here, sorry, my bad. I want to print this with. Okay, it's of the type dictionary. It's of the type dictionary. Let's call this as data. Okay, it's of the type string. That is what our expectation was, right? So JSON.dumps will convert a dictionary object into the string format object in JSON, and that's what we got. What is the reverse way around? If you have a string, JSON format string, and if you want to convert it into dictionary, what's the other way?
Loads.
Loads
Just
method.
a loads.
Perfect. Loads method. I just mention it over here so that you can use, you can refer it later. So loads method, it will convert JSON string to dictionary. Okay. Once that is done, we can basically perform the same data transformation and data pre-processing operations over here. Okay. Now I was actually looking for why I was expecting this the API to give me some kind of post or put delete functionality as well. Let me check the sports API. Most of them will only give me get functionalities, but if I remember correctly, few of them add certain functionalities related to adding, creating resources, wherein we could test the post and other functionalities. So this is my API key, which I was searching initially everywhere. Actually, it was present here. I mean, I could have, it's the same thing. I mean, here or here. No problem. Okay. Anyways, I'll try to figure out where exactly I can get that specific API or something wherein we can test the post, put, delete functionality. But anyways, it's not very tricky or not very difficult. The most important part here is, as far as data scraping or web scraping is concerned, to get the information from these APIs using the requests method and through either open API, closed API. What we saw in closed API, the only difference is the header, the way in which header is created, the way in which the parameters are created. Let's say if I change something in the parameter, not sure, but if I remember correctly, this was, let's say, the location, and I changed the location over here. So earlier, before that, this was 53.1, right? So I'll just comment all of this. Enable line number 14. This was our data that we got with Boston region. Okay, if I just change the parameter from, let's say, 40 or 20, whatever it is, let's see if the region gets changed. Yes, the region gets changed completely, and what you specify over here actually gets appended as in the URL. So if you remember, what I mentioned initially was that your URL basically, so let's say https://, so you specify over here. So whatever parameters that you would specify would append it over here as in values, and then that becomes your total endpoint that is accessible through these through the GET request. Okay. I hope all of this is clear. Any questions specifically you have? How to find whether any website has an API or not? If yes, then how to get it? To find any API, any website has an API or not, the best way is to look at the documentation of the website, because I mean, in today's age, almost every website has an API, but then the matter is whether it's open to public or closed to public, because anyways, internal developers, they will use APIs to perform certain activities, like I said earlier, data preprocessing, or even though performing some analytics work to get some meaningful insights on their existing data or inventory. So APIs are certainly there for all the applications in today's age, but as I said, whether it's accessible to us or not, as in general public, that's the question. And the best way to figure out is check the documentation. So if, let's say, for example, you are, initially I will give an example of Shopify. Okay, so Shopify is a platform wherein you can create your own e-commerce websites over there. Once you do that, it exposes many API services which you can integrate with your third-party applications. To do that, you have to refer the documentation of Shopify. Likewise, you have to go through each and every website's documentation, so specifically TNCs, to get this understanding. Okay. With that said, I think we are good. I'll just do one thing. In fact, for one another session, I'll take an example of an API which has the post put delete thing as well. So I can give you a 360-degree understanding of what exactly you can say how exactly the other methods work. But anyways, 95% of the times not Git, but Get is the method, and Get request is something that we would be using for web scraping activities. So we are good. I hope we are good until this point. What I would suggest is the activity that I have given you related to completion of this part, specifically the pseudo code over here. Okay, please give it a try for the remaining like 15-20 minutes. And I have, like I said, Monday, Tuesdays, we'll be following this approach. We'll be covering the theory part in the first 2.5 hours. And for the last half hour, we'll be providing some kind of, you can say, you can call it self-assessment or self-evaluation, whatever it is, but then you can attempt it at your own pace and then try to see if you have any challenges related to it. Because anyways, we were planning earlier to give it to you in your free time, but then eventually, if you have any queries, then to come back to the next session and discuss it, it might take, so we can resolve the same queries on the same day and get better results. So hence this approach we have tried to adopt. So you can attempt this specific scenario that we discussed related to related to APIs which are open. And there is one another MCQ that I have kept in GitHub. If you view my GitHub repository, the link for which I've shared yesterday as well. I'll share it today also. There is a new repo over there with the name API tutorial. If you go to this repository, the link is inside the chat. You will find a text file which has some MCQs over there. 15, not much, 15. Very simple, very basic one. Please try to attempt it. It is just an overview of what requests, what are different types of requests, API, how do we deal with APIs and all. So it will give you a better recap of what we have covered in today's session. And again, like I said, whatever answers you provide, please keep it in the document and send it across to the coordinators. Okay, that is what my expectation is. And I highly recommend create your own GitHub repository for that. The rest of the source code will be uploaded today over here within the same repository related to API tutorials. So for each topic, there is a new repository that will be created. And eventually, whatever training material or PDFs that I will be sharing, which is not now, right now, because we have not started full-fledgedly into web scraping. We'll just get started maybe tomorrow. Yeah, definitely tomorrow, because we'll be using libraries like Beautiful Soup and LXML parsers to scrape data. So that time I'll be uploading all the materials also, references, documents, PDFs for your referral. All of that would be there inside the GitHub repository. So please watch out for these repositories on a regular basis and let me know. Some of them are made private also. If it is not accessible, then let me know. I'll make it public. Any questions on this part? I hope all of it is good. So I'll wait for your tasks to get completed, and we'll touch base at around 10:55. And guys, please try to attempt these MCQ and this the activity that I have given to you in today's session, and then we will touch base to see if there is any queries, concerns, and I'll be evaluating your results later. Okay. Is that good? Guys, are you there? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Okay,
yes, sir.
okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. So Aman or Rajnindu, are you guys on the call? Not sure if they are on the call. No problem. I'll coordinate with them later. So guys, I'll be there on the call. Just in case if you have any queries, just put in the chat window and I'll be addressing to it. Where can we find the code? You can find the code in the same repository. I have not uploaded it yet, right? So let me quickly do it. Thanks for reminding me. Let me upload it directly. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll create a Git locally and then I'll upload it over here. You will just see it in a moment. Meanwhile, you can start with these MCQs. Okay. In just a moment, it will be uploaded. I'll update you on the chat. Is that fine? Okay. Can you please share? I have already shared. Here it is. Oh, by mistake, it is shared to individual. I'm not sure how it got selected. Looks okay. So you got the repository? Okay, perfect. Thanks for confirming. I'll upload the code as well in just a few minutes. And meanwhile, you can start with the MCQs. Thank you all. Thanks.